I can see much better now.
Okay, let me make sure.
Uh-oh.
I need to move over to the other side. Hold on just 1 second. I think I am going to change position. Hold on.
Okay.
Good evening, all.
Hi.
Hi. Hey, Patricia.
Hey, I'm back again.
We're in the same spots, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Me too. Okay, let me adjust my volume here. Okay, I will be right back.
Okay.
Hey, I think that's a better picture. Okay.
Had to go get that dinner out of the oven.
Hello.
Good evening. Good evening.
Yolanda.
Hey.
Yolanda, I wanted to share this on Facebook Live within the group. Do you mind?
Not at all.
All right, wonderful. And it's recording too.
Okay.
So let me set that up really quick. Make sure.
Shannon's our tech guru.
And I just requested permission to record on my screen as well so I can download it directly.
Okay, great. Just 1 second. Got to make sure I spell philosophies right. Whew, that's a tough one. Okay. Ziggy, can you turn that down just a little bit? Thank you.
I didn't know you could do that.
Okay, just waiting to get connected.
I'm learning so much from this group.
All right, let me see. Make sure that we are.
Here's a ball. Here's a ball.
Okay, Yolanda, you should be able to press record now.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone had a chance to eat in between sessions. Thanks for joining us once again. We are Hampton Roads Black Home Educators. And we're here to support one another. So we're happy to have you. This is our Friday series where our goal and plan is to have 2 workshops each Friday during the month of August. Joining us once again, we are Hampton Roads Black Home Educators. I think I have an echo.
Yeah.
You know what? That's
We
that's
mute.
coming from my computer because I had you on my phone, then I put it on the computer. So I'm gonna go ahead and shut off from the phone and just go with the computer.
Okay.
I can see better that way. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Each Friday during the month of August.
I thought it was me. Sometimes I have weird audio issues. So we're planning on meeting each Friday. So just keep up with your Facebook events. We'll meet at 1 p.m. and then another time later in the day. Could be earlier. Just depends on the moderators and host schedules. But just keep your eye on your Facebook, and then you will be in the loop. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Yolanda.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. I am Yolanda Chandler. A lot of you really don't know me. Wanda and I go way back. We started many years ago when I was I have two sets of children. I have a 19 and 18, a 8-year-old and a 9-year-old. So both sets are 14 months apart, but there's a 10 and 11-year age gap between the oldest and the youngest. So when I thought that I was home free, we decided to do this thing called life all over again. I homeschool from my two older children. We began homeschooling in 6th grade. They were private Christian schools up into that point. But one of the things that I realized that even having them in that setting, it was not enough to meet their educational goals or needs, I should say. I was teaching in public and a combination of private schools throughout the years. So I spent a lot of, particularly with the older children, I spent a lot of their childhood giving my very best to other people's children and finding that I had very little time or energy to give to my own. Homeschooling was something that I always wanted to do, but felt like I was not able to do so at the time. My son, he had always struggled in school. He was always the late birthday, so his birthday is not until March. So he was the kid who always kind of had his heads in the clouds. And that light bulb did not kick on for him until about February or March. He really lived to go to school just to see his friends. And every year we had to kind of assess whether to hold him back a year or to continue on and just hope that he would catch up. He was diagnosed with ADD, or we used to call it ADHD back then, but he was diagnosed with ADHD when he was in 1st grade, believe it or not. And he actually came to me and he said, "Mommy, I'm having a hard time focus." This was a 6-year-old who had enough, wherewithal and confidence in his own abilities to say, "I'm struggling." So this went on for, we tried medication. We did other kinds of things at home with him, but things were not really working. So by 6th grade, well, he was headed into 6th grade, and the school that he attended, you had to have a 70% in math in order to advance to the next grade level. And math was always the anxiety issue. So I kind of knew that we had to do something different, because going into middle school, it was not going to, with all of the changes just from going to elementary to middle school, you got your hormonal changes, and then you have the stressor of, I've got to get this grade in order to move on to the next grade level. It just was not going to work for either of us. So I had the discussion with him, how about we just try this for a year and see how it goes. The school that he was attending allowed us to do kind of a hybrid method where he took a couple of classes there and did the core subject at home with me. As I said, this is my social butterfly, so he basically only went to this private Christian school so he could maintain that interaction with his friends. I think he did science and PE or something like that, just so he could be around his friends. That year, We did hardly any, I didn't know what I was doing. I'll be very honest. I didn't even file a notice of intent that year because I didn't know that I was supposed to. That's how green I was. I just kept my son home and we just did what I thought was best for him to do. And I knew he struggled in math, so I went to Barnes & Noble and I got a math book. And we did 3 problems a day. We watched a Khan Academy video, and then we read books. And that was our homeschooling. That was all I knew how to do for that year. The next year, I thought that, I've read enough now that I know just enough not to know anything. So that year, I decided that I was going to bring my 7th grader home with us. And she was my then 8th grader. We're going to do 7th and 8th grade at home that year together. And I knew just enough to make everybody miserable. I did not know what I was doing. I thought because I had been trained as a teacher that I knew everything, and I made us all miserable. I thought that I had to replicate my classroom at home. So we have a spare bedroom. I turned our spare bedroom into our classroom. I painted the wall with chalkboard paint. I bought bookshelves. I bought desks, just like the ones that I had in my classroom. I went to a bookstore, got some ideas. I spent about $700 on curriculum, and we were miserable the entire year. Everyone hated it. I hated it. Every day we would go into that room and I was trying to figure out like, what do we do? And it was really hard for me because as a classroom teacher, I figured that if this worked in my classroom, surely it's going to work with my kids. But what I didn't know was the style that I was used to teaching and what worked in my classroom with 30 students that I saw, 7 times during the day did not work with my kids. So I'm going to share my screen with you just so you can, let's see, figure out if I can do this. Hold on just 1 second here. I'm going to try to share my screen with you in just a second here. But what I was doing at home didn't match what I knew, what I've been trained to do in my classroom. And it just didn't work at all. Can you guys still see me? Yes.
Yeah, we see you.
Okay, I'm trying to open. This worked perfectly fine earlier today. I apologize. So at any rate, what I was trying to say was it just did not work at home. So I really had to seek out other moms who were doing it successfully and figure out what it was that was making things not work at home. And one of the things that I realized and what I share a lot with other homeschool moms is you have to figure out what works best for you. I think one of the reasons why we've been so successful going forward in our homeschool journey is that I really was able to kind of just say, you know what, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to do things my way. I'm going to do things the way that I know that it works here at home within these 4 walls. And I don't know what I'm doing here, why I can't share my screen, but one of the things that I knew for sure was that I needed to learn my kids and figure out who they were, not just as students, but who they were as people. And that was the biggest turning point for us, was once I was able to find out who they were and how they learned. It really made a difference. The screen that I was trying to pull up to you guys to show you was really, I talked to women a lot about not going out and purchasing curriculum. I just said that first year, I spent about $700 on a curriculum that we hated. And my older kids are ferocious readers. They knew that, you know, whenever we used to spend every Saturday, we would go out and just hang out for the whole day. And they knew that at the time, mommy would not go to the bookstore. Wouldn't go to the toy store, but I would go to the bookstore. So they developed this early learning for reading. And so they were early readers. And the curriculum that I chose for them was reading heavy, but I didn't realize that I needed to move up a level or two in the curriculum. So when I got these books and I presented this great plan to them, they were bored to tears. And I found that I needed to supplement so much that after we lasted about 2 weeks with the curriculum before I decided that I was going to go my own way and do my own thing. So the thing that I wanted to share with you is really my two younger, I was trying to share a picture, but I can't even do that. I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm doing here.
You want to send it to me, Yolanda? I can try to do it for you.
Yeah, let me see if I can do that.
You could send it in Messenger, and I can
Let me
pull it. I'll do whatever you need me to do.
I can't even, Lord Jesus. I did this earlier today, and it was no problem.
Like they say in church, take your time, take your time.
Let me see. Maybe I can just share a portion of my screen. I think
it's working.
Okay, here we go. I'm on this kind of crappy computer as well, so that can you guys see that?
It's coming.
Our story, you see that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these are my kids, these are my babies. This is my monkeys, my tribe. But this is my son, Cameron. He's the one that had the difficulty, the reason why we began the homeschool journey to begin with. This is Kaylin, my oldest daughter. She is entering into her junior year at Birmingham Southern, one of the top liberal arts colleges in the state of Alabama. Cameron will be a returning sophomore. He had a lot of bumps and bruises that first year of college. He actually ended up on academic probation, but he pulled himself up by the bootstraps and was able to get himself together. Thank the Lord for the coronavirus and some lenient professors. He finished his last semester with all B's. This is she is the poster child for the middle child syndrome. She likes all things song and dance. She likes to be the center of attention. She wants to be TikTok famous at the moment. And this is my youngest son, Matthew. He is 8 years old. And as you can see on the screen here, Kaylin is the solitary. She's a visual learner, meaning that she really needs to see the information. She's my girl that if you give her anything, she has to write it out. She has to draw it out. She needs to be able to create it and put it in a format that she can understand. So when we're talking about learning styles, and I'm going to get to that on the next slide, it was important for me as the teacher / mom to know exactly how my kids learn. Cameron, if he is moving, if he's doing something with his hands, he learns best. Actually, he is studying kinesiology right now, so it fits perfect with him being that kinesthetic learner. He's very social. And remember, I said he was my social butterfly. Madison is my social. She's very, very verbal. She's my child that wants to talk it out. She loves reading. She loves writing, but she wants to have the check on the paper. And I'm going to get to that in just a moment. And Matthew is my combination kid. He is what we would define as 2E. He has been, he is gifted, really off the charts, but also has some sensory processing issues. But he is my combo kid. He is the logical. He thinks in math. He thinks in numbers, which really, really scares me You know, as a 4-year-old, he wanted to talk about negative numbers. And I'm like, whoa, kid, let's not do that. I'm not quite ready for that. So he's the kid that will quickly outpace mom. I know that it's going to happen within probably a few short years, probably before we even get to the middle school level. I moved him out. He and Madison are 14 months apart. Technically supposed to be doing, this past school year, we were supposed to be doing 2nd and 3rd grade, but I decided to skip 2nd grade for him. I really could have skipped him up to 4th grade, and some of the work that I gave him was even 5th grade level. But he's the kid who's generally going to outpace me very quickly. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this. Hold on a second. Okay, it's not letting me go to my next slide. I'm sorry, guys. I'm usually more technically advanced than this. So I don't know if it's this laptop that's just going very slow or not. But let me just talk to you from the heart. So the difference, the learning styles that we generally have is the visual learner. I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. The learning styles that we have are the visual learner, which I said to you that my daughter, she is the visual learner. And then you have the musical or the auditory learner. You know, that's the kid who hears music. You know, that kid who's always tapping on a desk or making, you know, sticks into drums, you know, who likes to have music playing in the background. That would drive me crazy. But you have kids who learn best when they have if it's too quiet, they can't study, they need to have music. Sometimes you have teachers in a classroom that'll play classical music or things of that nature. That's your musical or your auditory learner. And then you have your physical and your kinesthetic learner. As I said, my son fits that bill. He's the kid that you need to move around with him. You need to show him how the parts move together in order for them to connect for him. And then, of course, my youngest son, he's the logical or the mathematical kid. And then there's a combination. You can actually have kids who, depending on what the subject is or what the age level is, developmentally, they may change their learning styles. So the idea of figuring out what your kid's learning style is important, but it's also important for you to know that this is going to change throughout your homeschooling journey. There isn't a one-size-fits-all bill here. You really have to make sure that you're adjusting, making the adjustments as you go along. You guys with me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The next thing that I wanted to talk to you about is I have this quote up that I used to, say all the time. And every time someone asks me about the homeschool, I always talk about there's a quote by Gandhi. It says, there's no school equal to a decent home and no teacher equal to a virtuous parent. And I try to live my life, my homeschool life, according to that, because really what you really need to do is just close the door and love on your kids. Once your kids know that they're in an environment that you are there for them and want the very best for them, no matter whether you can get through the math lesson without tears or not, but just having that confidence to know that this is a warm and safe environment, and whether I get this right or not, it's not going to be the end of the world. What we can instill in our kids is what's going to send them out into the world to help them be the kind of citizens and the kind of adults that we want them to be. And it's very interesting raising mini adults, as they call them, my 18 and 19-year-old, soon to be 20-year-old, and this 8 and 9-year-old is, I was able to, because our family homeschool, my children, their relationship is so close. You know, you don't generally have families where there is a 10-year age gap, and my youngest daughter and my oldest daughter and my youngest son are joined at the hip. You know, it's like, you know, he sees me and he may come and give mommy a kiss, but he's gonna run and jump in sister's lap, right? So, you know, I always make the joke about he's giving my love away, you know, and I have a picture of them, you know, when he first came home from the hospital, where he's just like curled into this little fetal position and she's holding him in the crook of her arm. And it's been that relationship since the day that he was born. And we do home first and school second. And if there ever was any advice that I would give to a homeschool mom, it was focus on home. Kids learn anyway. And I think Shannon said something similar to that on the session earlier this morning. But your kids are going to learn whether you buy the best curriculum, whether you spend $1,000, or if you go to the Dollar Tree and pick up a workbook, or go to Barnes and Noble and pick up a workbook. Your kids are going to learn, I won't say in spite of you, but your kids are going to learn anyway. So we just have to make sure that we are taking, you know, give yourself some grace. I'm a huge proponent of just being gracious to yourself. We give grace to everyone else, but when it comes to giving grace to ourselves, we don't really know how to do that. So determining how you choose to homeschool is equally as important as determining why you're homeschooling is equally as important as determining how you're gonna homeschool. So when we shift the focus to the educational philosophies, there's several different strands that I wanted to just introduce to you. I'm sure that you all are, you know, you've heard these topics before, but the first one is classical. And classical is just basically, you know, you're giving that, you know, you're interjecting rhetoric. You may have, you might be doing some debate within your homeschooling, but these are all the traditional type methods of homeschooling. So you have your classical, that's, and I believe that Wanda can interject here, but I think that Wanda was doing classical with her kids. Is that right, Wanda?
We were using Abeka.
Oh, okay. Okay. I would say that Abeka is more of a traditional method.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the classical homeschooling styles, and I'm trying to read to you what I have here. The classical homeschool style is really, you know, when you think about your classics and literature, when you're it's very literature heavy. It's it may be interjecting a biblical curriculum in there, intertwined in there. When you think about the biblical, the classical curriculum, you're thinking about great books, you know, where it was considered, you know, your Latin and Greek and your, you know, all of the classical authors you would think of when you think of like Shakespeare. You would probably interject some world studies in there, study of literature and world history. So, you know, those, it does have its benefits. You know, their most traditional or classical methods, they are going to cost you, you know, if you're going to go with a box curriculum to do this classical method, it's generally going to be pretty pricey. You may end up doing heavy with foreign language. You're going to have all of your traditional, it's going to mirror a traditional high school a lot. Some of the drawbacks of this method is that it could be very rigorous. I don't suggest or advise people to spend a whole lot of time homeschooling. Of course, when you get to the middle and high school grade levels, you're going to spend more hours than you would if you were doing elementary school. But generally, during the classical method, you're going to spend several hours a day working on schoolwork. So if you're looking for some flexibility in your life, in your family life, and in your homeschool life, you may want to decide whether this classical method is going to work for you. There are some classical co-ops and communities around. One of those that you're probably most familiar with is Classical Conversations. It's a very, when we first homeschooled, that was the first thing that we were introduced to, was a Classical Conversations group. I knew right away that it would work for my daughter, but not my son, and decided that that was not the way that we should go. Some of the things that you may want to consider with the classical method, as I said, is it may not work well for every child. You have to really, really know what your goals are, and then know what your child's learning style is, if this is what's going to fit best. When we first started homeschooling, I really thought that classical was going to be my jam. I thought that, I was going to have my kids reading, we were going to have all these great debates about all these things that I wanted to read and introduce to them, and it kind of did not work out that way. The other method, and I'm going to try to run through these quickly because I want to be able to get to comments, is the Charlotte Mason method. You've probably heard about this. This is a huge proponent of living books and nature studies. I joke with my friends a lot. I am not the Charlotte Mason girl. It just would not work for me. This is, it's history heavy, creating portfolios. It's big on memorization and dates and facts and figures. For me and my kids, that really does not work well for us. If you like nature walks and journaling and time tests and things of that nature, this may be something that you want to consider. Charlotte Mason is based on a Christian methodology. So, again, you need to understand that that's what you're going to get. And if that's not something that you're looking for, this may not be the method for you. Charlotte Mason works very well with elementary age students, but it does not work well once students kind of get to the middle high school level, because there really aren't a whole lot of resources around. You basically have to create the wheel, so to speak. Let's see. The next method, this is what I use. Oh, well, Montessori. Of course, this goes back to the approach that children have an unstructured learning environment where it's basically free range. You have a lot of manipulatives. I interject a lot of Charlotte Mason into our school. I'm what you would consider an eclectic homeschooler. We kind of go with the flow. So one week we may be heavily Montessori, the next week we may be unit study. But Charlotte Mason, the benefits of Charlotte Mason is that children really get to, particularly in the younger age group, they get to take autonomy of what they're learning, right? You can have things available for them, but they really get to decide what they want to learn and at what level they want to learn it at. Again, Charlotte Mason really works well with elementary age school children. Norfolk Public Schools a few years ago tried to interject some Charlotte Mason aspects into their public school setting. It did not work well for them, and they quickly axed it, only because they tried to do it at the middle school level, and it works best at the elementary school level. Middle schoolers are not trying to sit around and figure out what to do on their own, because they're developmentally at that age where they don't want anyone to make fun of them. They want to have fun with their friends, and they want to blend into the crowd. So the idea of you taking ownership of your own education, it just doesn't work well with middle schoolers. One of the resources or the philosophies that I mentioned earlier was unit studies. I am a huge fan of unit studies. My kids and I have done many, many, many unit studies throughout the years. We've done everything from chocolate to roller coasters, to butterflies, to horses, to sharks. Just about anything you can think of, we've done it. What I generally try to do with, one of the things that I did that my older children, that I think that they really enjoyed, was we did a study around the world. And what I did was we had some brainstorming session where they had to tell me where in the world they would like to travel. And from that, we did everything from learning about the cuisine of the country, learning about the currency, learning about their government, learning about their food, learning about their most visited tourist attractions. So I was able to combine every subject that you can think of based upon that one subject. So we really enjoyed that. I do that a lot with my younger kids as well. But mostly who we are as homeschoolers are unschoolers. And what I mean by that is that we don't follow a set curriculum. One of the things that I have done, particularly since we've come back to Virginia and we have to show proof of progress, it's made me have to plan a whole lot more. So one of the things that I did was I looked at a list of basically what subjects needed to be covered at what particular age group. And we basically have been using that as our guide and basically going with whatever the kids are interested in. So depending on whatever it is, what the ladies' obsession is, that's where we kind of fit the homeschooling into that. The other educational philosophy that I wanted to talk to you about, because this one has become very popular in the last 5 years, is Afro-Centric Homeschooling. And that's, of course, it's basically self-explanatory. It is coming from a perspective of, the Americas not being the center of the world, and interjecting, the study of not beginning Black history at slavery, right? And, you can, right, exactly, slow claps. But we can, you can, of course, there is a curriculum called woke homeschooling that a lot of my friends are using. I have not used the curriculum just yet. I am planning on using a bit of the curriculum during this upcoming school year. But really what I wanted to basically get across to everybody is homeschooling is not a one-size-fits-all thing, right? Where you are today may not necessarily be where you are tomorrow. I'll share with you one of my failures, because we talk a lot about our successes and not a lot about our failures. One of the failures that I have had this past year in our homeschooling is my daughter Madison, my middle child. She is the child that wants the checks on her paper. She wants you to give her a quiz. She wants to do a spelling test. She wants you to give her 10 math problems and put, minus whatever at the top and give her a sticker and tell her that she did a good job. Well, that doesn't quite often work with when you're unschooling, or when you are doing Montessori, or, it just doesn't quite work. And because my son is the gifted learner, and I felt like I had to keep him so engaged to keep up with whatever his latest obsession was, I focused on that and thought that it would be one size fits all and that it would work for the both of them. And I have to tell you that it was, my daughter, she was able to, we had our, our good moments, but I had to stop and make sure that I shifted focus and said, you know what, here's your spelling list. Let's do some vocabulary here. And, at the end of the week, let's go back to this and see how many you got right. Let's do some math problems instead of me just putting the math problems on the whiteboard and you going up to the whiteboard and you doing the problems on the whiteboard. Let me give you a worksheet so that you can see that, yes, 10 out of 10, you go, girl, you're doing well here. So you have to meet your kids where they are. So, whatever method is going to work for you is going to work depending on what your kid learning styles are and also how you are as a teacher, right? Because the way that my life is set up right now, I'll tell anyone, if my kids were into Charlotte Mason, if I had one that wanted to do a nature walk, we would probably have some issues. I would do my best to meet their educational needs, but hey, I am not your girl that wants to go out and, picking up sticks, right? We have, this garden in the backyard and, during quarantine, I have been getting into my garden, but right now my son is into bunnies and he's like trying to figure out how to trap the bunnies and, every day he's giving me these facts about the bunnies and everything. And I'm like, dude, he wants to bring he asked the other day if he could have a pet cockroach and he wants to bring the spiders inside. And I'm like, no, dude, that's not my jam. So you gotta keep that outside. So I appreciate his interest, but that's not where our homeschool journey is gonna, that's not where we're going, right? We're not gonna shift our entire philosophy and process here because today you wanna learn, we wanna bring the spiders in the house. So anyway, that's my spiel. If anyone has any questions, I feel like I'm a talking head. So if anyone has any questions or comments, I'd love to answer those.
Aisha had a question. Let's see, it was in the chat. Where did it go? Oh, is there a test to find out which type of learner your child is?
Yes, and I had it in my slide that's not working. So what I'll do is I will post that to the Facebook group right under the flyer for this. I'll post that so you guys can do that. The other thing that I did for my older kids when we first started homeschooling after that first disastrous year is I gave my kids a Myers-Briggs personality test. Just because I think that that's so interesting. Of course, it's going to work a little bit better with if your kids are a little bit older. But I gave my kids that test. The other thing that I did with my kids, my husband and I read that book, Love Languages, and there's a awesome quiz in the back of that book. And I gave my kids the quiz. I was actually able to guess what love language each kid had. And I think that all of that kind of is intertwined. Once you know the personality of your kid and you know how that because let's face it, if a kid feels loved, they're going to be able to learn, right? Even the most difficult subjects. So if you can, make sure that your kids know, hey, I love you, and yes, we're going to do this math or, this difficult subject for you, but it's still okay. And I'm still your mom first. I think it just creates a whole different dynamic and environment in your homeschool. So yes, there is a quiz, and yes, I'll link that in the comments. And the woke homeschooling, yes, woke homeschooling is very, very popular. If you even on the Hampton Roads home educators on our Facebook page, if you just type in the search bar, we've had several discussions about woke homeschooling. Yeah. Any other questions? So one of the things that I have, as I mentioned before, my younger son is the one who pulls on me the most, because I don't want to generalize, but often with kids who are considered gifted, they become easily obsessed with a particular topic. So for him, it's kind of hard for me to plan homeschooling, because for a month straight, the only thing he'll want to talk about is Mars or black holes. And then 3 weeks later, it's bunnies, and that's all he wants to talk about or even think about. So for me, I have to be open to the process and realizing that learning doesn't happen in a bubble. I can give one kid a worksheet, but at this kid, I have to say, okay, let's go watch this, or let's talk about this, or let's read this, and then figure out where we can go from here. One of the things that he's really interested in learning, that I will be very honest with you, that scared me to death, was physics. So it is my plan to figure out how to teach my 8-year-old physics. I am a English teacher by profession. I took one math class in college and one science class in college. So it's going to be very interesting trying to figure that out. And to be quite honest with you, I am probably going to outsource it because it's just not my jam. It's just not something that I do. It's just not, it's far above my pay grade, as my husband would say. So being open to outsourcing is something that, I really want to take the stigma off, because a lot of times we think as homeschool moms that we should be able to do it all, and that is not the case. There are people who are more capable in particular areas than you are, and if you can pay them for their time to do that, or make out some kind of barter arrangement, I would strongly urge you to do that. We mentioned earlier a little bit about curriculum. One of the things that I did say in the earlier session was I was trying to get people, I know that more expressions is, everyone wants to go there. But please, please, please take the quiz with your kids. Talk to your kids. Don't just have them take the quiz, but actually talk to them to figure it out, what it is, how they see school going this year. Homeschooling looks very different in this COVID world than it ever did before. We had never been at home as much as we were in these last 4 months. So my kids are not used to being at home. We homeschool, but we were hardly ever at home. We were out in the world doing things. We were going to the library and going to museums and meeting with other families and, taking field trips and doing all these things, learning by living. So this crisis schooling, it looks very different at the moment. So, I just would urge you, if you're going to go out, if you don't feel confident enough with, making your own curriculum, so to speak, or just going with the flow, there are many, many free resources that you can use. Please do not make the same mistake that I made and go and spend an obscene amount of money. Now, if you are able to do that and you want to do that, by all means, to each its own. But if I would prefer to give my kids experiences rather than spending $2,000 on a box curriculum. You know, I would much rather spend that on an enrichment class, whether that's on OutSchool or, you know, whatever. But I would much prefer to do that than to spend my money with someone saying on this day, your kid should learn this. There have been lots and lots of discussion about homeschool pods. That's the new buzzword in homeschooling. Let me just say, you know, as a certified teacher, I have had several people solicit me to say, can you homeschool my kid? And I have said no to each one of them, only because I know what I pour into my kids on a daily basis. And I don't know if I could pour from the same fountain into someone else's kid equally the way that I pour into mine. And I would not want to do a disservice to another family, right? Because there's some days where we wake up and we're like, you know what? Today is a YouTube homeschool day. There you go. Today is a Netflix, you know, kind of day. And one of the things that I do with my kids is go learn something. How about that for homeschooling? Go learn something and come back and teach it to me, because mama just needs a mental moment, right? So we have to make sure that we're doing that. But if I am responsible for homeschooling someone else's kid, I probably can't do that, right? I can't do home first and school second. I've got to do school first, because this other person is expecting me to replicate what a teacher would do in a classroom. That is not the way that our homeschool works. We do life, and then all, you know, learning fits into our life, but we don't do school and then life. It's never that for us. So, you know, and that has come through maturing during this homeschool process. It certainly didn't start out that way. But the other thing that I mentioned earlier is, according to the law within the Commonwealth of Virginia, you have to be a certified teacher in order to have sole responsibility for someone else's child. Now, I know that there are people who kind of do it under the radar, and, you know, what you do inside of your own home, you know, that's your business. But if you have been approached by someone to homeschool their kid, now I'm not talking about when it's a collective responsibility with parents who are, you know, you teach, you know, my kid this, and then I'm going to teach that. That's a co-op, and that's perfectly legal. But if you are going to be the primary educator, you have to be a certified teacher. So that's my soapbox moment, because I've gotten that question so many times, you know, that I just wanted to make that perfectly clear. So do you think there can be an ADD diagnosis for older learners? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Who was that who asked that question?
That's me.
Oh, okay. Okay. I saw Dan Brown and I was like, who's Dan Brown?
Oh, that's my husband.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
The big computer in the office.
Yeah, I have not been diagnosed with ADD, but you know, the research indicates that it is hereditary, and I do believe that, you know, my son is a true ADD ADHD child, and I truly believe that, you know, he got that from me. You know, I like to call it multitasking and not being a great multitasker, but I think that, you know, it definitely. But again, I think that goes back with the learning style, because I know that with my son, he struggled his first year in college, particularly because as a freshman, he went to his advisor. His advisor looked at whatever major he wanted to have and said, okay, these are the courses that are available. My son had 5 classes, right? He got almost D's in all of them. I'm not kidding, right?
Yeah.
But because, nobody said, hey, kid, don't take this hard math class, this hard science class, this hard history class, this hard English class, all during your first semester at the same time, right? So spring semester, I said to him, bring me your schedule, right? And I said, oh, you need to drop this class, right? And we need to see if we can put an elective here because of his attention deficit, he needs to be able to have 1 or 2 things that he can focus on, right? And to make sure that he can stay afloat. But if he has, 5 major classes that he has to take in one semester that he's got to keep all this together, that's when you end up on academic probation. So when he was homeschooling, when I was homeschooling him, I would have to give 1 assignment at a time. Let's do this first. And then when you're done with that, come back to me and I'll give you the next step. Because the multi-step, instructions were difficult for him. I had to kind of break it down for him to be able to do that. And then I would have to say something like, stand up while you're doing it, right? Don't sit at the desk, right?
Yeah.
He thinks better when he's standing and walking, He has his best ideas when he's like just walking around. So I had to do things like that. But absolutely, you can get the ADD diagnosis for your older learners.
And where did where would I go to her doctor for that, or do I seek it out independently?
Yeah. What age child are you specifically referring
My
to?
oldest, she keeps telling me she's having a hard time focusing.
Okay.
So and
so
it started in high school. So
okay. Yeah, I would your first step would be the primary care physician. And then they would be able to I'm pretty sure that the diagnosis process is probably improved since my son was in first grade when he got his official diagnosis. But yeah, I would suggest that, speaking with that primary care physician would be your best, your first and best step. I would also encourage you, just like you're an advocate with your children's education, to be an advocate with their medical care. If you get a doctor
if
who
I interject something about the ADD and old kids, if you don't mind.
Oh, of course.
Make sure that it's not anxiety, because sometimes that shows up just like ADD.
Right.
So make sure it's not anxiety. Make sure it is ADD and not anxiety, because you don't want them on the wrong medication.
That's true. That's true. And what I was saying was, be their best advocate. So if something is not setting right with you with that first doctor, it's your right to get a second opinion. One of the things that I dealt with, particularly because my son was so young, was the stigma of medication. Unfortunately, within our community, there is still a huge stigma about, providing medication for, things that deal with our brains. So I had to combat that with family members, and, ex-husband and, all those types of things. But you have to do what's best for your child. And, my son was able to articulate to me that he was struggling even at 6 years old. So I knew that it was something that I needed to take serious and something that I had to do something about. Now, he's at the point now where he feels that he does not need medication because he's able to kind of manage things. But it sounds crazy, but the best thing that ever happened to my son was a fidget spinner. You guys remember that craze? Drove me crazy, but it was the best thing that could have ever happened to my son. because he'll just sit and make noise all day long, like just because he needs to be moving and doing something. And it used to just, you know, when we were homeschooling, I'm like, can you stop making noise? Can you just sit for a moment? But again, his learning style is that kinesthetic learner. So we just had to make the you know, we had to adapt. Yep. Any other questions or comments? Should older students take an aptitude test? I think absolutely. Wanda asked the question. She said, should older students take an aptitude test? Should those scores be used to tweak their curriculum? I think it really depends on what the goal is, right? Because, you know, not every child is going to go on the same path. There are some people in their homeschooling who are homeschooling with the end in mind that their kids are going to get scholarships to go to college, right? For me, that wasn't really my focus, so I didn't make my kids take an aptitude test. They have taken aptitude tests post homeschooling to kind of figure out what kind of college major would be best for them. But I think that it certainly can be used during your homeschooling to decide which curriculum fits best for you. And certainly, you know, if you're going to be a traditional homeschooler, that would probably absolutely be good for you. But you know, I didn't do that for us only because we have never really been your traditional or classical homeschoolers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. My daughter, she is attending Birmingham Southern College. It's a private liberal arts college in Birmingham, Alabama. She was actually the college that she attends, she was admitted without testing. They really wanted her as a student. So a lot of times we kind of, you know, in the early elementary years, it's kind of, you know, we're doing all the fun things. And then by middle school, the anxiety starts to creep in. And then when you get to that high school level, you know, you're like, oh, we've got to be at this table for 8 hours every day because they've got to get into college. Colleges want homeschoolers because homeschoolers know how to think. They don't want kids who are going to come and they don't know how to do anything. And you've got to baby them and hold them by their hands. I have friends who are college professors who feel like they should be teaching middle school, right? Because so many kids are coming to college unprepared. Colleges want students who can articulate themselves, who can formulate their own ideas, and who can think critically. If you can instill those things into your kids throughout your homeschool journey, you have given them a leg up on every other student they have, right? So whether we're focusing on getting them into college or getting them ready to become entrepreneurs, the best thing that we can do is teach them how to think critically. How they're going to do that other than being able to explore and learn and figure out what they're good at, right? During their homeschool, during those formative years that they're with you. My daughter, she is a junior right now. She's downstairs so she can hear me talking. She is at a very, very, very expensive school. I'm talking louder now, right? She's at a very expensive school, but she is a great baker, right? So I am hopeful that she's going to take that expensive education that she has and pursue what she's passionate about. But, you know, it's her life. She's able to kind of do what she wants to do with her life. And if she decides that baking is just something that she does on the weekends, then I'll probably need to go on my 600-pound life, but I'll enjoy all of the treats that she bakes.
I'll help you eat those.
Yeah, I'm only saying it because she can hear me. She's downstairs talking. She can hear me talking. But yeah, you know, your kids, you know, they're going to be okay. right? Okay, she said, could you discuss a little bit more about unschooling? How does an unschooler learn experiences life? Yes, so one of the things that I did last year with my kids was we made a list of things that they wanted to, what they were interested in learning about. And we kind of just went from there. Some days, some homeschoolers are better at creating this positive learning environment than others. We struggled a bit only because my kids, if I do not direct them or nudge them in a certain direction, they would be, or my daughter, she would want to just be on TikTok all day. That's just me being honest, right? So I do a lot of strewing, which means I give a lot of ideas and make things readily available for them to kind of go off and pick up, right? But if I just said, let's just decide, you just wake up and just decide what you're going to do today, that doesn't quite work for our family. But I have several friends who are homeschooling who are doing it very successfully, where the kids are just, these perfect little children who just decide that they want to wake up and do a chemistry kit, or they wake up and decide that today they want to sew a complete outfit. Those are not my children, right? I know my children. So for my children, I have to strew. And what I mean by strewing is I have to give them learning opportunities and make the learning available to them and let them decide how it is they're going to learn what we have to learn. Now, because we were living in Alabama where the homeschool laws are very lax, I was able to do that a lot freer. But now, since we have moved back to Virginia, we've been in Virginia since March, so 4 or 5 months now. Because Virginia requires proof of progress, I'm probably going to have to tweak a whole lot over the summer to figure out where we're going. But because I mentioned proof of progress, let me just interject into the conversation. Proof of progress is not something that we need to be sweating bullets over, right? If your kids can count, you can show that they've progressed throughout the year, right? If your kids have, done anything, one of the ways that when we lived here, years ago, that we showed proof of progress was just by having a portfolio, right? And you can use the CAT testing. We did that method as well, but I'll probably have to tweak it just a little bit because we're now mandated to show that proof of progress every year. But you can certainly unschool. Unschooling is just another way of saying child-led learning, right? So what your kids are really into, what they're interested in is what you do, right? Like I mentioned, my son being obsessed with space. So that's what we did for a while. Everything that we did revolved around that. And because I mentioned, about gifted learners, they kind of get obsessed with topics and then they move on quickly. It has made me have to readjust things to kind of go with the flow. When you unschool, how do the kids know that they are done for the day? Is there a set time for learning or a set number of tasks? The way it generally works for us is learning doesn't just happen during a set time schedule. It just kind of happens. So if you are up reading a book at, 6 o'clock at night, doesn't mean that homeschooling has just started. You know what I'm saying? It's just, we just do whatever. I will say that since we have been in Virginia, we have been much more traditional in the sense that because of quarantine, everyone was stuck in the house. And I was like, there's stuff that we just got to get done, right? So we would start at a certain time and end at a certain time. But I just felt like we had to have some part of our life be kind of normal in a sense, because things were not normal during that part, that period. When we first got here in March, things were just kind of crazy. And I felt like all of us needed some order. College kids were here, husband was here full time, kids were here, and it just was not working for mommy. And I figured that we needed to have some structure. So we did from 12, my kids are not morning people. I'm not a morning person. So we did from 12 to 2 or 12 to 3, and then we were done. So whatever it is that you were going to do during the day that was, educational related, we did it during that time, and then you had some free time to kind of do what you wanted to do. But generally with unschoolers, there is no set schedule. You just kind of let learning happen organically. I'll post a link to, I have a friend, her name is Carla Williams. She has 2 great books about homeschoolers. She has, when you think about poster child, Black family homeschoolers, she is it. Her oldest son has just completed his first alone solo flight, right, across the country without anyone, just him in a plane by himself. I am not there yet, right? That I'm too much of a control freak to kind of, let go of the reins that much. But, I'm learning more and more. The more I learn to trust my kids, the more they show me that they can do it on their own. One of the things that I mentioned, that my middle daughter, she's the traditional schooler. Even unschooling works with her, because she'll wake up and say, she woke up one morning and said she wanted to learn Shakespeare. And I was like, okay, kid, okay, let's learn Shakespeare. And she wanted to read and watch Romeo and Juliet. And she wanted to write an essay on William Shakespeare. And that's what she did. So it was traditional in the sense that she wanted to have, an essay that was due at the end of whatever she learned, but there was no restriction for me saying, this is what you have to learn. She was in charge of her learning, and it flowed with her interest. So I feel you guys are being really quiet, and I feel like a talking head, so.
We're just listening.
Okay.
Taking it all in.
Okay. Well, if there are any questions or whatever, you guys can send me a PM or whatever. I know we have that mentoring program that Shannon mentioned earlier, and that was a wonderful idea, Wanda. I think that that's necessary and needed. So, if anyone wants to connect, I'm not an expert by any means, but I do kind of know, I've been around enough to kind of, be able to talk you off the ledge. Because there will be days where you're just like, I just can't do this. These kids, it's going to be either me or them. Somebody's got to go back to public school, right? And I have had those moments where I'm just like, we've got to do something different. So, if I need to talk you off a ledge, if I need to tell you it's okay to leave those kids and go get Starbucks and come back and try that math lesson again, you can do that. You can do that. I mentioned that our first year homeschooling, I had no idea what I was doing. My son did 3 problems a day. That's all he could do. He was so, he did not have any confidence in his abilities at all. So I was like, kid, if we could do 3 problems and get through these 3 problems without crying about math, today was a success. So don't measure your homeschool success by other people. That old saying that comparison is the thief of joy. So just remember that. Will there be any periodic meetings during the homeschool year? I certainly hope so. So I think that's the goal, right, Shannon and Wanda? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the goal, to form a community. I had just formed, I lead a thriving homeschool community in Birmingham. I don't live there anymore, but I started the movement right before last year. It's growing by leaps and bounds. So I'm kind of like dividing my time between Birmingham and Virginia. But I'm more than happy to jump in and do whatever we need to do to make sure that we can be supportive of each other and that our kids could have friends that look like them.
Yes.
That was one of my biggest concerns here. And because of COVID, we have not met any homeschool friends. The only people that my kids know are cousins and neighbors. That's it, right? Because we got here 4 days before the lockdown. So we have not been able to meet any new friends, no homeschool friends. So, I really need that. I think moms need support because we need to know that we're not in this by ourselves, right? Sometimes you think your kid is the only one that's crazy. Kids are crazy, but we forget that, right? I don't know about y'all kids, but my kids are crazy. And,
Same.
it's often that I need a break from them. So being able to get with other moms who know what your life is like and get with them and not discuss kids or homeschooling, that's refreshing. Shannon, I don't know what this question is about. Can more information be shared about the program that was mentioned by Brittany Wyatt? I don't know what that is.
Kindergarten counts. Maybe it was on the Facebook group. I'm not sure either. Let me take a look. I have my other computer.
Kimberly, do you have a homeschooler? I mean, a kindergartner?
No, I actually have a preschooler.
Okay.
But request was out for people who were starting, going to have a kindergartner. And so I wish I could have been a part of it, but I definitely know my daughter's, probably maybe going to be too young for some of the things that they're going to do. And so she still sent me an email and she still, asked for the survey. So I wasn't sure. And like I could be combining two different programs in my head with this.
Gotcha.
But I wasn't sure if you guys were familiar with it or if more information. It looked like it's just more geared toward math and like looking at the email she sent, but I didn't know if you guys were familiar with it.
Yeah, I have not heard of it before, but I'd be more than happy to kind of look it up to see what that's all about, if we can help you with that.
I was just wanting for more information, so maybe I just can email her. I did have another question I was getting ready to type. You mentioned earlier about being a teacher. I'm still a teacher too. Mm-hmm. And so I don't necessarily think I homeschool my daughter. I guess you could say I do though, because she's not in daycare.
Right.
And so between my mom and I, we definitely, try to meet the challenges she needs education. So how do you handle, if you are still working or if there is a working mom, like balancing working full time and then coming home to homeschool? Like, where are the kids during the day? Do you just do that in the evenings? Like, how does that balance out?
Well, it depends. The dynamics are always different. There are lots of homeschool groups out there where single parenting homeschooling and working from home, moms, how do you homeschool? So there's a lot there that you can, put into a search bar and get some perspective from those specific parents. But one of the things that you should probably keep in mind is that homeschooling doesn't take a really long time, right? When kids are in traditional school, what grade do you teach?
I teach 5th grade, so
okay,
this is going to be like untraining.
Right, exactly.
But, not that I think you need 100 problems, but it's like
right.
So 30 minutes
homeschooling with your daughter as a preschooler, an hour, right, will be sufficient. So homeschooling does not take as long as traditional schooling takes. And just think about for a moment when you're writing out your lesson plans, how much direct instruction you have. Your direct instruction may be 18 minutes, depending on the length of a class block that you have. So if you break that up during the day and add that 18-minute times, 5 classes that you have a day, you're probably going to end up with like 2 hours of direct instructional time. So for our family, we don't ever really go past 2 or 3 hours. So it could be that, if you are, if you're teaching virtually, that you homeschool when you're done, or, if there is time, if you're, available early, or if you even do it on the weekends. I know some families that homeschool Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, right? So the thing about homeschooling is no one is telling you when you have to be in school. Right now, your principal says to you, you have to clock in by 7:10 and you get to clock out at 2:15, right? With homeschool, you have the ability to decide when you're going to do whatever it is you choose to do because you're in the comfort of your own home. So the learning can be done anytime, at any location. Yeah, I think you're muted. You're on mute.
No, I'm sorry. I was talking to the children.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking to me. Yeah. So it can happen whenever. And particularly, with your daughter being so young, I always tell people, I get a lot of questions about what curriculum should I be using for my kindergartner? And, my always response is, you don't need a curriculum for your kindergartner. Read to them, sing songs, let them play. Children learn best through play. And I know that there's such a pull on us to say, oh, I got to get them ready. I got to get them ready. They've got to be reading. They've got to, they've got to do all these things. But your kid is not going to go to college not learning how to read, right? Just like they learn how to potty train. They're not still in diapers, right? When they're developmentally ready, all of those things will happen, right? So give yourself some grace, take the pressure off, and enjoy your baby. One of the slides that I didn't get to show was, I say it all the time, is the days are long, the years are, can't get it out now. The years are long, but the dates are short. Is that right? I can't even remember what I was saying now. Let me go back to it. The days are long, but the years are short. That's what I was trying to say. Okay. My older kids, it went by, and Wanda can attest to this, the years went by so quickly, right? Yes. You think that you have all this time, but your 4-year-old is only going to be a little girl for a short time, right? Before you know it, she's going to be upstairs in her room and all she's going to want to do is TikTok all day. Right? And that's my 9-year-old, 10-year-old, right? So, cuddle with your kids and read them books and let them color and sing songs, and don't worry about a curriculum. Yes, you can. One of the ways that my kids learned how to read was leapfrog videos. They watched the videos over and over and over again, right? And before you know it, they were, 3-letter words and writing them out and all that other stuff, things that I didn't really teach them per se. I didn't sit down to them and say, okay, today you're going to learn how to spell dog, right? It's just the things that you naturally do with your kids. So just love on your kids, do all those things that you would normally do, read to them, encourage that early love of reading, and, talk to them like they're normal people, use normal words with them. Wanda would shake her head yes to that. We don't ever talk to babies with the little goo goo gaga baba. We use real words, and all of that stuff, and it'll all come. It will definitely come. So don't believe the hype. You don't have to do any of that. You really don't. And if you want it, because I can feel that you're a researcher, Google the age that most European countries send their kids to school, right? Google the normal starting age of a kid in Germany or Switzerland. You'll be surprised. They don't start traditional schooling until much later, because they want to make sure that kids can have imaginative play and that they can develop all of those, social skills that kids learn on the playground and things of that nature. Whereas in Americanized school, you're giving kids standardized testing in kindergarten, and they're supposed to be playing with blocks. So as a homeschooling family, give your kids the freedom to be able to develop and grow.
I have another question. I'm pretty sure the answer would be yes. How would you handle, I guess if you wanted to do a hybrid, I can be honest to say, I don't really have a desire to homeschool. Mm-hmm. I do want to know how to be a better homeschooling parent while she is young now, because
right.
It's going to take a lot of untraining.
Sure.
For not know what she needs to know by kindergarten, and for me
right.
not
right.
It's
right.
hard. But how do you, what would be a good hybrid model for that, in the next upcoming years? What would I need to look for and stuff like that?
Well, it just depends on if the hybrid that you're speaking of is doing an online public school and then you doing, your part afterwards. My son was able to do 3 classes at a private Christian school, and then I did the other core subjects at home with him. So it just really depends on what method you're going to use. Not many public schools allow you to really, do both unless you're just doing that on your own. There aren't really, any public schools that say you can come here for this set number of classes and you can do these on your own. No, I don't know any public schools that will do that. The private schools, of course, will do that. You have to, of course, pay for those classes that you're allowing your kids to take there. But, I would just say that, when you're considering, if you know that you don't want to homeschool, still figure out, what your kid learning style is, start from there. And then whatever it is that you do with them, make sure that it matches that so it doesn't feel like it's extra work, right? Where they don't feel like that they've already done school and now that mommy's come home, I'm being punished and I've got to do school again, right? Because then that's when you're going to get a whole lot of resistance and they're going to homeschool. I hate homeschool, right? So just make sure that it's consistent. So that, when you get to whatever age it is that you may want to transition into homeschooling, that they don't have this negative perception of what homeschooling is, because it shouldn't be burdensome to you guys. It should be something that, your kids enjoy. My kids love homeschooling, right? There are times when they say, oh, we miss this or whatever about being in a traditional school, but generally they love homeschooling because they know that it's different from what other kids are getting, right? That they have a lot more freedom and flexibility than what other kids are getting. But if they're doing a K-12 program or something like that, that's public school virtually, and then you're coming back and saying, oh, but by the way, let's do these math problems, right? They're going to be like, no, we've already done, we've put away school for the day. So I would just, suggest to you strongly that, if you have a kid who is, visual or whatever, you can, make a graphic organizer or whatever and not make it seem like it's schoolwork, that they're having to do this extra stuff, right? It's almost like being punished by being made to do a book report, if you hate reading. Now, if you're a kid that loves reading and you're like, well, sure, I'll read this book and I'll give you a book report. But, if I said to my son, give me a book report, he would die, right? But if I said to him, let's read this, and then you create your own comic about it, based upon what you read, you create your comic and you like put in your great crazy ideas, sure, let's do that. So it just, you know, you just don't want to make it burdensome for them to do that. I don't know if I've answered your question, but
yeah, you did. I wasn't sure. Like, I don't know if it's something we talked about it, like maybe up until she goes to middle school. They didn't know what like transitioning into her going to middle school would be like. Like I said, as an educator, her getting into gifted for many reasons is really important to me.
mm-hmm.
I want her kind of to be tracked, for lack of a better term.
Well, you know, there are many homeschoolers who are gifted and who get scholarships for college, right? So, you know, and I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other, but I just wanted to, you know, just to remind you that it's very, very possible to homeschool your kid and get them on that track where, you know, their giftedness is shown, and you know, you can track the progress and everything, and have, you know, have them taking standardized testing or whatever to prove, you know, their abilities or whatever. But you have homeschoolers who are national merit scholars, you know, so you know, just keep that in mind when you say that you want to make sure that she's able to follow a gifted track. One of the ways that homeschoolers do that is by doing dual enrollment. When I said that my son is likely to outpace me very quickly, I'm already kind of looking into some of those things for him. You know, way back in, you know, years yonder, when I was in college, there was an 11-year-old in my biology class. And I was like, that's amazing, right? And I'm thinking that that's probably going to be my son, right? So there are many avenues that you can get the same results without having to solely rely on public school to do that for you. Yep. Any other questions?
Yolanda, I have a question.
Sure.
Because a couple of things you said like really resonated with my children's learning styles.
Mm-hmm.
And I often wonder about rigor and if that's really a thing or if it's a myth. And, you know, how far do you push your children in, you know, you're looking at their learning style and their age and their grade and all these different things. How do you know when enough is enough for that moment or the day? Like you mentioned, you gave your son 3 math problems and you were like, okay, that's it for now.
Right.
But how did you feel that out so that you can keep them like in a sweet spot of learning?
Tears. I'm not trying to be facetious, but for, you know, and that's where you have to know your kid, right? You know, I know with my son at that point, because he was so, he had been so beat down by being the kid in class where he was the last one to finish and all the other kids were looking at him, and his anxiety was so great that he couldn't remember his basic math facts, right? So for me at that point, I had to boost his confidence, right? So that whole first year was just about, hey kid, you can do this, right? And once I got to him to the stage of you can do this, then I was able to push it a little bit more to say, you know, let's do that. But I also think it's having that open communication with your kids too, right? Because, you know, I don't know, my kids haven't been homeschooled their whole lives. So if I had gone and talked to a teacher and the teacher was like, you've got a great kid, but he's lazy, I was like, yeah, that's my kid, right? Because I knew my kid. So when homeschooling came along, I was able to say, okay, this is what you gave me, and this is what I know you're capable of. So let's go back and let's redo this, right? Like my son, even with the one who's quote unquote gifted, he will try to give me minimal effort, right? And I have to say to him, no, you're not going to give me minimal effort, right? Because I don't give you minimal effort when I make dinner for you, right? I don't just throw it on the plate, right? So we have to make sure that if we are doing our very best, right? So with the academic rigor, I think it really depends on what your end goal is. If the end goal, like Kimberly's saying for her daughter, is to be on that gifted track to do the national merit scholarship or whatever, you're probably going to have to push your kid to be competitive to do that. But if that's not the end goal, if your homeschooling goal is to expose your kids to as many opportunities as possible, then you may be a little bit more slack on the rigor. It just depends on what your goals is, where your goals are, and what your kid ultimately wants to do in life. You know what I'm saying? I have to push my sons because they're the ones that, particularly my youngest son, it comes naturally for him. So I have to go a step further, right? And for him, what I actually had to do was I had to show him what grade level he was working on. And I generally didn't want to do that. But I had to show him the grade level it was to allow him to rise to the occasion. Because if you're just like, oh, you skipped second grade or third grade or whatever, yay you, right? But if that's still comfortable for you, then it tells me as your teacher that I've got to push you a little bit more and give you the work that I would have given, one of my middle school students or something. So it really just depends on your kid, again, the learning style and what the ultimate goal is. And that may change from moment to moment. My daughter is the one who is, again, we had that hiccup with math where she knows how to do it, but she's still very timid with it. So if I'm standing near her, she can do it and do it perfectly. But the moment I walk away, it's like, what am I supposed to be doing again? Right? So I've had to kind of push and then pull back, right? Push a little bit, see what you can do, see what you're ready for. And then if you fail, that's okay too, right? We have to get out of the mindset that we're going to be good at everything at all times. That perfectionist, they got that from me, right? Where they just automatically think they're supposed to get it right on the first try, and if they don't, they kind of shut down. I think your daughter probably does that too as a gifted student.
Yes.
Right? She doesn't want to try anything that she doesn't think she's going to be good at.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so you have to push them a bit and say, let's try this, and it's okay if you don't know how to do it, then it's just something that you have to learn. My son thought in his mind that he knew how to ride a bike. Like he just thought that he was just going to get on the bike and just ride the bike. And my daughter got on the bike and rode the bike, and he was devastated.
Wow.
Right? So because he could not just get on the bike and ride the bike, it had to be that early lesson is not everything's going to come easy to you. Some of the things you're just going to have to keep practicing, and you're going to have to fall a few times before you get it. Metaphor for life, metaphor for homeschool.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah. Well, this has been great conversation, guys. I can talk about this all night, but I know you guys want to get on with other things. But did anybody else have any last questions or comments? I think we've answered all the questions so far.
Yep, I think so too.
Well, I apologize that I was not technically savvy enough to share my screen the way that I wanted to. But I will, I can email or, message the presentation that I kind of put together. Wasn't many slides, but I did have some information there regarding the quiz and everything like that. So I can post that on the Facebook page for everybody. I'll also post what I was referring to about the Myers-Briggs personality quiz. That probably, it takes about 20-25 minutes to do that. But I would strongly suggest that you do that, particularly if you have middle schoolers, older kids to do that with. It's a fun activity to do as well.
Oops. That sounds good. Well, we're going to meet again on Friday, I believe that's the 7th, right? August 7th?
Yes, I think so.
With 2 new topics. So be sure to check our Facebook events in the group for the times. Any closing thoughts, Yolanda, Wanda?
No, I just want to encourage everybody, give yourself some grace. What you do within your home is the most important thing that you'll ever do. So don't stress about, how to homeschool. If it's, you're going to have your days where you just think that you're not going to be able to do it. But, take a break, let the kids sleep in late, do whatever it is that you need to do to reset, and then try it again the next day. But, if you're stressed, your kids are going to be stressed. They're going to sense that coming from you. And learning generally does not happen in that environment. So, can't beat a kid because they don't know how to do multiplication as much as you would like to, right? So just kind of take those breaks when you need to and give yourself some grace. That's my, that's the great advice that we could give everyone.
Well, thank you, everyone. We still have 9 people on, even though we see 4. So,
oh, hey, everybody. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody and interacting with everybody a whole lot more.
yeah, same here. And we're trying to get some things set up for the children to socialize virtually as well.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
if you have ideas, let us know.
Absolutely.
All right, all minds clear. I'll go ahead and close the Zoom. Everyone have a wonderful evening, and thank you so much. And thank you, Yolanda. We really appreciate this time.
You're welcome. Sorry about my issues with my slides. I apologize.
Oh, no worries. You came from the heart. I could visualize everything you were saying.
Oh, good.
And
Good.
to our founder, Wanda, thank you so much for this opportunity. We appreciate you.
Oh,
Thank you, Wanda.
thank you, guys.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Good night.